Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GeekWave. This is the low budget show. It's the show so low it has no budget. And for this week, we're talking about Star Wars. It's been a minute since we've done like Star Wars talk because talking about Star Wars is hard today. It's not a topic I thoroughly enjoy diving into, but nonetheless, let's just lay it all out this week. Talk about everything that is never going to happen in this franchise again. Because we're not allowed to have good things in Star Wars anymore. I don't know. This is so... I don't know. We'll get into it. They announced recently that they got a writer for the next trilogy. Whatever. We'll talk about it a bit because it's so interesting. And Star Wars is so weird. Like, it kind of kicked off every single thing we see in modern Hollywood today. But yet it falls into, like, so many traps that other franchises don't, you know? Like, how is it we have, like, Ghostbusters operating better than Star Wars at the moment? That makes no sense to me. I don't know how that is possible. But we'll get into that in a minute here. We have a little bit of news to talk about. Not a whole lot. D23 did happen this weekend in Brazil. I don't think I need to cover it. You know, it's stuff from Marvel you've seen before. A couple trailers dropped. They don't look good. I'm still not convinced on either of these new movies coming out. Brave New World, a terrible poster with a very bad font. Not digging it. Red Hulk look, whatever. And Thunderbolts. I will not be convinced with that movie until I see what they do with Lewis Pullman. That's like the make or break for me if they actually like have a compelling story to say or if it's anything. So that's kind of like it from D23. I guess like the other big thing, aside from like Pixar saying stuff like, here's a bunch of Buzz Lightyears. They're the bad guys in Toy Story 5. What if AI takes over Buzz Lightyears? That's what I think is going to be the plot of that movie. That sounds boring and really stupid. The other thing was, hey, Ray Romano's here. He's doing Ice Age 6. Which, is this the first movie announced from, like, Blue Sky Studios? They were like a department of Fox. They were a division of Fox. They did a couple animated projects here and there. We actually talked about them ending a little bit ago. Blue Sky even, like, released that, like, final clip, which was, like, the send-off to the studio. That was, like, Scrat, or is it Scratch? I think it's Scrat or Scratch. He like finally got the acorn he's been chasing for like 5 movies. Now you're telling me we're getting a 6th one? I didn't look into it too much. I don't know if it's like through Blue Sky or if it's like from like Disney itself. Let's see if we can look that up as we're talking about it. Ice Age 6. They're saying it is probably going to be 2026. Let's see. Okay, this is from Collider. Did they announce what it's from? All right. The last one is from 2016. Damn, that's a long time ago. Everyone looks to be returning. New adventure, no details were given. And sequels, the sky's the limit, whatever. All right, this isn't any information. That doesn't tell us who it's coming from. Like, is it going to be under Blue Sky or is it going to be something else? It doesn't really say here. Disney previously tried to launch a new era of the Ice Age franchise with the Ice Age Adventures of Wild Buck, a spin-off that went to Disney Plus, but nobody cares. So, man, I guess it's going to be through the Walt Disney Company, which is going to be kind of weird. I think if there's one animated series we're going to cover in 2026, I'd rather talk about this than Toy Story. We could talk about these movies. Like, I think they're interesting. And by that I mean I like the first one and the other two are just fine. But it's a franchise. It's kind of fun. We'll get into it eventually. But Ice Age 6, sure. I guess we can come back for that. Why not? I'm not against that. I would rather the whole studio come back, but whatever, you know, like turning this into a Disney property, yeah, whatever. It doesn't sit well with me. It's like knowing that like Family Guy and The Simpsons are now part of Disney. Like, do we lose the purpose when they become part of that? I don't know. That's what I think at least. But that's like the least important news we're going to talk about. There's like 2 other things I'm going to bring up before we get into like the Star Wars talk. The first one is something that came out of left field for me. I had no idea about this. I only learned about it through an article from The Hollywood Reporter where we are getting a movie of Grendel, the character, the bad guy from Beowulf. This movie is going to be an adaptation of John Gardner's like novel of the same name, where it kind of like takes the mythology of like Beowulf and Grendel as characters, and it turns into like a, Grendel's like actually like a tragic figure, and he's like an anti-hero doing his own things. I haven't really read the book. I definitely want to, because I think the Beowulf like lore and the poem itself is very interesting. I have like a fondness for that movie from Zemeckis, even though I think it's terrible. I think it's like, this is a choice you are making. And it's like the perfect time to bring that back. So doing a monster movie about Grendel, that gets me excited. It is a monster movie. It is straight up a monster movie. When you're reading the article, they talk about how we're going to see things on wires. It's going to be like a big action movie with like cool creature designs and stuff going on. That's sick. And then you see the actual picture for the Grendel creature, which is based on the design from the novel. And it's from the Jim Henson Company. The Jim Henson Creature Workshop is building the design for Grendel. That picture has been on my mind since I saw it. I think this looks incredible. This already, I don't know when or where this is going to release, how it's going to be distributed. I don't know. But I see this. I have never been more excited for something in a long time. This looks like the classic films I love, like Labyrinth and the Dark Crystal and Ninja Turtles. Like, this looks like it. A big, like, creature puppeted monster suit that has such an iconic design to it already. The fur looks incredible. The lighting they use for this picture is so good. I cannot wait to see what this is going to be. And then we see the cast for this thing. So Jeff Bridges is going to be Grendel. Bryan Cranston is going to be the king. And Dave Bautista is going to be Beowulf. And T-Bone Burnett is the blind harp-playing Shaper. And you're like, okay. What? We're getting a movie where Dave Bautista is Beowulf and Jeff Bridges is Grendel soon, and it's going to be from like the Jim Henson Company, and the director is Robert D. Krakowski. Like, come on, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? This is awesome. Do they say who is developing the film? I know we see that like Palisades Park Pictures is handling international sales. So CAA Media Finance and UTA Independent Film Group co-rep rights for North America. Okay, that's cool. I'm so excited for this. It has been a minute since like one still image of like a design for a movie has made me go, oh, this instantly became something I have to see. I love it. I'm going to read the book, and that is something I don't do when we do these adaptations, but I love it. And if you read this Hollywood Reporter article, you can hear Robert talking about like the process. There's something in it where he mentions like the relationship from like the King and Grendel is like the Inspector Clouseau and Pink Panther, and I'm like, oh, dude, you're just selling me on what you're doing here. You're selling me on every idea that you're coming up with. I think this is going to be so much fun. This looks so cool. We'll talk more Beowulf, I think, before this movie comes out, but this is the kind of thing I want to see Dave Bautista doing. Like, take something that people are familiar with and make it your own. That is so freaking cool. That is so cool. This is going to be incredible. This instantly became my most anticipated project. I don't know if, like, ever, but, like, for 2025 to 2026, I think this just shot up to, like, I cannot wait to see what this is going to look like. If we ever got that Red Sonja movie released, that would be up there too. But man, I'm so pumped for this thing. That image, oh man, I'm just blown away. That is so good. I cannot wait to see what that's going to look like. Oh man, that's so much fun. That is so much fun. Damn, dude. So yeah, you're familiar with like the epic poem Beowulf. If you haven't, there's a bunch of stuff about it. The comic book Grendel takes some inspiration about like the concept of that type of character too, if you're interested in that. But we're getting a movie with Jeff Bridges, Bryan Cranston, and Dave Bautista doing like an epic, a classic English epic. That is sick. And none of those guys are English. That's awesome. I cannot wait to see what this is going to look like. Final piece of news we'll talk about before we get into our main topic is a trailer that released today for a little movie called Mission Impossible the final reckoning. Now, we know about this one for a while. This was supposed to be Dead Reckoning Part 2, but something Paramount said was like, maybe the idea that it's Part 1 drove people away from seeing it, not the fact that it was like bodied between Oppenheimer and Barbie, and then a bunch of other stuff going on, you know? It was in a bad slot for that movie. It's a good movie. Dead Reckoning is a good movie. Now they're trying to build it as like, well, we could get more butts and seats if we build this as the final time Ethan Hunt will ever grace our screen. At the very least, the final time we'll see Tom Cruise play the character. I don't believe that for a second. I think this is going to be like his thing forever. He'll be like 80 years old if he gets to that point, and he's going to be making this type of movie. But this trailer looked good. I think these movies are always interesting and fun and do some great visual stuff. I like Macquarie. What I really like is that Tom Cruise paid the crew during the pandemic so they wouldn't have to take other jobs and they can just like start working when like it came back to start working. That's pretty cool. This movie looks interesting. Like, he's not going to die in the end. I don't think Tom Cruise would ever allow himself to die. But in this movie, he's fighting shirtless or, like, naked or in his underwear or something, and that's pretty sick. We're doing, like, some biplane fighting, and man, do the colors pop. Do you know how cool it is to see, like, a big-budget action movie where the colors actually pop and look, like, vibrant? They're not, like, dark neon lights throbbing in the air like a John Wick movie. This is exciting to me. This looks so much fun. I hope this works. I think it will. Like, I have no doubt in my mind this is going to be on par with Dead Reckoning, which was a really interesting and fun movie. Man, it's exciting. Like, movies can be good. Isn't that weird that, like, the 8th installment of a franchise can genuinely look good and get people excited to see what the movie is going to do? That's rare. When was the last time that happened? If ever. I think it's cool. This is kind of exciting. What would be the 8th? Yeah, okay. I guess it would be Star Wars. Because Episode 8 was The Last Jedi, and as we all know, that's the best Star Wars movie. Alright, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, let's jump back into the world of a galaxy far, far away. Do y'all like Star Wars? Do you? I think some of you must. Some of us are still fans, right? I think so. But it gets harder and harder every day to say you're a fan of Star Wars, especially because of the toxic fandom that surrounds it now. I hate what that's become. It has truly kind of ruined my interest in a lot of what this franchise is, just knowing that there's so many people thinking they can say it's one thing and we can never say it's something else. And it's like, shut up for a minute. I don't need this. Star Wars is inspiring all the wrong kinds of people talking about it. And I'm like, how can you like something so much and completely misinterpret everything it's about? How does that happen? I don't know. I don't like it. But every so often, Disney will dust off their old thing and be like, we're going to do some Star Wars. We have Lucasfilm. Let's do a Star Wars movie. So D23 happened. This news came out before D23, but we're just going to like talk about it in like vague terms of like everything that's happening, right? D23 happens. New look at Skeleton Crew, I think. More just like, hey, look at this, it's coming out. Which, that's going to be interesting. Going in a direction of making something directly for children. That's a fun idea. We need more live-action children's shows. Those are good and important, and we should try to make them. So that's exciting. Andor Season 2 will be coming out in April of 2025, which is exciting as well. In a perfect world, we'd get 5 seasons of this show, the 5 years leading up to the events of Rogue One, but we just can't do that anymore because time sucks or something. All of you watch too much Netflix, so everything's shorter and dumber and it's stupid. Whatever. So that's the next thing after Skeleton Crew is Andor. And then I don't think they have another live-action project announced yet for, like, Disney Plus, which is good because let's move away from that. The Disney Plus experiment has came and went, and I don't think it was successful. Kevin Feige kind of said they're going to try to move away from that stuff too, and everything going on with Marvel, only do a couple shows a year. 2025 is going to be stacked because they had all this stuff being made. So when as it goes on, we're going to see less and less of stuff coming to Disney Plus, which is good because I don't think you're helping your brand by having all these stuff just originally on Disney Plus. And that leads us into the first part I want to talk about. We have one Star Wars movie we know for a fact is going to come out in 2026, and that is Mandalorian and Grogu. And I want to use that as the jumping on point to get where we're going to go, because I don't know how The Mandalorian and Grogu is going to go as a film. I think your audience are people that watch on Disney Plus, and there is a very different type of, audience for these things. Are people going to be willing to go to the theater if the thing they used to be able to get at home for essentially free, you know what I mean? It's not actually free, but they can make it seem free. Are they going to be willing to go to the theater for the thing they normally didn't have to pay for? It's the age-old problem of subscription services, just breaking you into thinking you don't have to leave home if you're paying quality prices for this stuff. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know how good Mandalorian is known outside of the community that watches that show. Can general audiences accept that as a viable thing to see at the movies? I don't know. I think you're going to get your loyal base, and I have no doubt in my mind this movie will at least get to 500 million. But to make this the summer blockbuster of 2026 for Lucasfilm, I don't think that is going to happen. I can't see that being the case. It just has too much going on for it. Also at D23, we kind of learned that Pedro Pascal will be returning for that movie. Yeah, no shit, he's going to talk into a microphone. They're going to say he was the Mandalorian. He might film one or two scenes while he's filming Fantastic Four where his helmet's off. That's probably it. That's literally probably it. I don't know how this is going to go. I find it utterly fascinating that they're even going to attempt to do it. I think a clear way, I have two shows that I think are a very clear way to show you how fast things change in our culture. The first one I always bring up to people is Rick and Morty. If you watch Rick and Morty, you can see the decline in quality from going 9 out of 10 and 8 out of 10s to 6 and 5 out of 10s by how it references itself. Normally it'd be like The Simpsons, where 30 years on, that generation who grew up with that is going to write it now, and that's where we get the references to the old stuff, which is where The Simpsons is at, and it's seeing a renaissance. And with Rick and Morty, because all these other writers moved on, we got a new crop in. The self-referential stuff always feels like parody of what the original stuff was, and it's only 7 seasons in. So that right now just feels like the show has gone through its half-life quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker each time. And a show like Rick and Morty did that. The other one I cite, and it's a little less obvious, you kind of have to pay attention to the way things changed post-pandemic, is The Mandalorian. The first season of The Mandalorian is probably the greatest accomplishment for Disney Plus. That show premiering on that platform, looking the way it did with this new revolutionary technology, having the time and patience to build up its characters and its world and not let things linger for too long and just explore a new idea, was truly incredible. Truly incredible. And then season 2, you start to see some of the cracks. And season 3, you just kind of went, yeah, we're just talking about Bo-Katan and stuff. It's not even that important anymore. And the other thing is, in that capacity, is look at the decline in the way things look. We had some incredible cinematography and lighting effects for the first season. And we just got less and less interested in doing those as we got further along with things like Ahsoka and Season 3 of Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. Things started to look less good. And then we had The Acolyte, which looked really good, but clearly Disney didn't want to go that direction. So we don't have that anymore. So here's the only things we know for a fact Star Wars has continuing. It's the Mandalorian story. That's all we know for a fact is continuing. I don't think there's any new animation being developed at the moment. I don't think we're going to see Skeleton Crew get something for another couple of years. We're stuck at this moment right now. The only thing Disney has working for them with Star Wars and Lucasfilm is The Mandalorian and Grogu, which could look like a really expensive TV movie you can see at a theater. I don't think they are filming it for IMAX. They should. That'd look better. Like, if you're turning this into a movie, which they clearly did last minute, like they did with Moana 2, then you should use better cameras for it. We'll see how that works. We haven't seen any, like, official footage that wasn't shown, like, on someone's screen that they're capturing when they're, like, you know, just doing something at, like, a convention or whatever. This could be interesting to see what happens. It could be a turning point for Disney. If this movie is successful, I will guarantee a lot more of these types of movies are going to look and feel like The Mandalorian with the volume technology, with not very good cinematography, and digital camera lighting. Can we hire lighters, please? For the love of God, get some people in here who know how to work a light. So that's all we know is coming. At the same time, they announced they were doing the Mandalorian Grogu movie. We had 2 other films announced. We had the old school James Mangold, Cecil B. DeMille, The First Jedi movie, which is like a biblical epic of Star Wars proportions. No movement on that at this point. We haven't heard a thing about that. We haven't heard a thing from James Mangold at this point. Now, he does have a movie coming out in December, so I imagine a lot of people are going to like start asking him questions about this movie and Swamp Thing. Don't be surprised if Swamp Thing gets pushed forward. I could imagine between the two, it's more likely Swamp Thing gets the push than the biblical epic Star Wars movie. We also got an announcement about a Rey Skywalker film, which was supposed to be like the continuation. It wasn't officially like transcribed as being this step in the next trilogy or whatever. But just the idea that Daisy Ridley would be returning to a Star Wars movie. We had a director attached from Ms. Marvel. Damon Lindelof was going to work on a script. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. Damon Lindelof is no longer working on his script. Or no, is it Stephen Knight? Was Stephen Knight the one that wasn't? Probably both of them. I'd imagine neither of them are working on a script now, if either of them are working on it. Yeah, it's Stephen Knight. Stephen Knight was the one who's no longer working on his script, which of course he's not. Disney is impossible to please. You need a yes man. Stephen Knight is not your yes man anymore. You need a guy like Simon Kinberg to come in and do a thing. So the news broke like last week. Simon Kinberg, probably best known for being one of like the key producers and writers of the X-Men franchise, the bad era, to be very plainly spoken about it. He's been hired by Lucasfilm to write and produce a new Star Wars trilogy. So he is working on like the continuation, what they're dubbing as episodes 10, 11, and 12, which we'll see what happens. I don't doubt it. Whatever. Okay, so there's so much to unpack with this. First off, Simon Kinberg, I don't think is a good writer, but is writing the thing people want from a Star Wars movie. Like, I think it's so interesting looking back on the prequels now, having all the time removed from them. I still don't think they're like great movies, but they're just so much more interesting than like the stuff we make today. Even if they are bad and ugly and don't get anything done, they are something. They just make you feel nostalgic for a time when like somebody took a chance and let a guy go crazy. I would rather Star Wars go in the Megalopolis direction again than going into like the safe zone of like doing Expendables 4 where you're like, who gives a shit? So that's very interesting. Simon Kinberg did not make any good X-Men movies. And the ones that he did work on that you say they're good, I can guarantee they're not good because of him. But here's the thing. He got those movies produced and out on time. And that's the other thing that is important to know about this. He made them. He produced them. They were out on track. You know, they came out when they said they were. They were all before the pandemic, but they were out. You know, like he got them out there. So that's kind of cool. And this is supposedly going to be a trilogy. So there you go. Isn't that exciting? They are dubbing it, like I said, 10, 11, 12. which is kind of interesting. I guess. I don't know. Like, does the audience want to see that? Now, like the half-life for these things, like I've said, like I've been saying for so long, it gets smaller and smaller each time. Return of the Jedi ends in 1983. In 1999, we get The Phantom Menace, right? 2005 is Revenge of the Sith. 2015 is The Force Awakens. So that went from being gone for 16 years to a decade, and 2019 was the end of Rise of Skywalker. This, at the earliest, could be out by 2026, 2027. So we're saying under 10 years until the next trilogy starts. That's at the earliest. I mean, I think they're going to want to push this right away because 2023 was such an abysmal year for Disney. They're going to want to try to get things on track to make money. And, 2015 was the year we had an Avengers movie and a Star Wars movie, and they both did really good. Two really interesting movies that I think are some of the better of this current era, and they haven't really matched them since. So you get a guy like Kinberg who can get a movie out there, get a script produced. At the very least, he can get you a shooting script on time with decent enough exposure for every character you want to play with and have something interesting to talk about. Whether or not you love what his movies are, and I don't love what his movies are, there is something there to talk about. A little while ago, he was also attached to produce a Star Trek film. I don't know if that's the case. We'll see. He was also like attached to do like a Battlestar Galactica movie. That was like before the pandemic. He's like, what is it with this guy getting all the science fiction projects? Like, I love to see new Star Wars. I do. But the guy who like failed at doing Galactica and has yet to produce anything from like his like new Star Trek era, like I don't know. Like that's confusing to me, and I don't know where to go from that. So the other thing we're going to talk about is from the Snyder, Jeff Snyder. He was kind of like teasing. He had some inside information about what this new trilogy could be. And what he said was Daisy Ridley as Rey is kind of being tapped to star in like the Ben Kenobi, Obi-Wan Kenobi role. And I think he says Ben Kenobi, which makes me think like older Jedi Master who's kind of hidden. But do we really want to do another trilogy with a hidden Jedi? I don't think so. If it were up to me, I say we go back to do something like the prequels, which is just a lot of people talking in rooms, insane screens, and people flipping and jumping all over the place. Let's not do like the dystopic Jedi Order. Let's go back to like a new era. This is what you should do. And again, I have no desire to like write a Star Wars movie. I'd like to work in the franchise, but I don't want to make like one of like the episodic adventures, right? What I would do is set it, let's say, decades later. I wouldn't make it in like 2026. I'd cast somebody else to play Rey or whatever. But because time is so confusing, it doesn't matter. But I would make it like the Jedi Order is back. Like we learned the lessons of Skywalker and like that family becomes the cautionary tale. It's no longer like, have you heard the tragedy of Dark Plagueis the Wise? Clearly we don't want to talk about that because the Acolyte's done. You do it, have you heard the tale of Luke Skywalker? A young Jedi when the Jedi were lost. He found his way to becoming a Jedi Master, but he almost became corrupted by the dark side. He spent his entire career as a Jedi fighting against the corruption of being thrown into the dark side. And you have that become like the temptation, like his father before him gave in, but he found the light. And you could have that tale of like the balance of the two. The father who was bad, finding light at the end. The son who was so struggling with his dark side, but he always chose the light. He found the light. And that can become like what the New Order represents. It's about taming the feeling inside you and not like abandoning it. It's more just like how do you deal with these impulses and these ideas? Which, yes, that's what all Star Wars is about. But I feel like in today's climate where things are more politically charged, I think you should take a more political approach to it and kind of go, you have to understand that maybe like anarchism is not the answer. Maybe rebelling isn't the answer. Like, do you completely switch it on its head where the rebels aren't the good guys anymore? Like, I don't think you should. I think a key thing for Star Wars is the aspect of war and how we talk about that. But I think in 2024, the concept of war has changed so drastically. It's less like guerrilla fighters and, the Viet Cong working against like the American industrial system. And it's more like there is the threat of like nuclear destruction in every corner. There are people in powers of like political stance that are letting this terroristic intention happen, and we allow it and we don't stop it, but we know it's wrong, but we just let it happen. And I think there's so much you could tap into that, like doing something interesting in that capacity for Star Wars, talking about, people like Zelensky and Putin and, like Israel and Gaza and Trump and stuff like that. People that you could easily make statements for in Star Wars. You can clearly tell what George thinks of George Bush in like that era. You can tell what he thought about Vietnam in the original films. And then you throw in like your commercial Ewoks or whatever. But I think like for a creator, there is something you can say about like the current political stance of the world and how it like treats violence and war and terrorism and the threat of nuclear annihilation. And you could have something very important there. Like, for instance, I'm just going to use terms that we know from Star Wars. You could have the Death Star be an analog for a nuclear holocaust. For like, this is something that's going to destroy the world. It's going to kill everything in its path. You could have that be said. And that makes it a little more modern. And you could have like somebody trigger happy, willing to pull it. And maybe people are like, please don't. Like, there are innocent lives that are going to be lost. That is what Andor is kind of about. I think taking that approach the way Tony Gilroy did for that show and putting it on like the big screen is an interesting idea. That's what I want to see from like the Rebel and stuff like that. You could easily throw the Jedi into that too. You could make it like there's scarcer Jedi, and the Jedi themselves kind of represent like the nuclear power, like the threats of everything. Like maybe like this planet has a Jedi or has a Sith, and this Sith is just like destroying innocent lives around everything. And instead of like letting a Jedi enact something to go stop them, maybe like Rey or like the New Order or whatever, it's just like, you can't go. We cannot unleash a Jedi into this path. Something like that, where it's like there's clearly something there to explore if you're willing to go that route. But the other thing is, where do we fit this new crop of characters? Leia and Han and Luke are gone. We have Chewie and R2 and BB-8, and C-3PO is still there, kind of. And we have Lando is still out there. We know he's still out there. Nine Nub is still out there. Akbar died. Who else is left from like the original films? Do you get any of the original people? Chewie's the only one I think you need. But do we just get a different type of creature to represent the Chewie role? Does Chewie take like a more legendary like elder statesman role in like what's left of like the Resistance? Does the Resistance even exist? Should the existence exist? It's interesting. I like the idea of R2 and C-3PO being like the through line for all of the films, the characters that we see. If any of them are set to return, I'd like it to be those characters. I don't think I need Lando. I don't really need to see Chewbacca. I'm fine with it being those two. And where does that leave people like Rey and Finn and Poe? And who are the other ones? Who's that one? Jaina? What was her name? Jaina? I don't remember. Are there other ones? Rose? Is Rose still alive? Right? Yeah, Rose is alive. What did they do with her in that other movie? Not much. Rose Tico, is that her name? Yeah. Where are they? What are they up to? Probably nothing much. Like, Are we just going to have them fit to like their old roles where like Finn and Poe are just resistance leaders still fighting the good fight years later? And even if it's just like a couple years removed from those events, is that interesting at all? Does the New Order still exist? Are we still fighting stormtroopers? Are we allowed to move on from that? Because at the same time, moving on's great. That's always good. It's always good to expand a franchise into new directions. That's what Rian Johnson tried to do. They were going to give him a trilogy for that, but then people are like, this isn't how Luke Skywalker should be. So now we don't get anything nice from Star Wars ever. That is true. You can quote me on that. We haven't got anything good from Star Wars really since that happened. So I guess Mandalorian Season 1 is the only good thing we got since then. But people just want to see the old stuff too. And since you can't bring Harrison Ford back, is having Oscar Isaac return enough for people to get excited? The Force Awakens is not even 10 years old at this point. It will be by the time this movie comes out. But do we have enough time and love for these characters where they are characters people accept now? I think they'd be kind of excited to see, like, what's Daisy Ridley doing? I don't know, though. Is there enough there to make people go, finally, the return of Finn, a character who got nothing to do in the last movie? What would that look like? I don't know. I don't know if there's anything there to get people excited. So you'd have to bring back Chewbacca. You'd have to bring back the Stormtroopers. You'd have to bring back a bigger Star Killer. You'd have to hit the beats. Because that's what people expect from a Star Wars. But also, if The Mandalorian Grogu is very successful, and people are very excited about that franchise, and there's more people talking about it than I imagined, maybe then people are willing to accept new things. So no matter what that looks like, I think 100% we are going to see, at the very least, Grogu appear in episode 10, 11, and 12. I don't know in what capacity. I don't imagine it's going to be in the role of like Yoda, but I can imagine he is going to be a character that exists. Now, does that mean we're going to see an old Din Djarin? I don't know. Is Ahsoka going to be alive at that point? Is Ezra or Sabine or Hera? And if we bring those characters in and we age them up, is that enough to satisfy like the old fans? Do we bring in Boba Fett again? Because he'd be like 1,000 at that point, right? Do we bring in Omega from Clone Wars? Cal Kestis, is he going to show up? That's another prominent character that we've yet to see on the big screen. It's so open-ended because all those things are strictly Disney Plus, and I don't know if like your movie audience is the same audience that is watching all the Disney Plus stuff. I don't know. It's why I'm kind of worried about Brave New World and the Thunderbolts, because a lot of the key components to those movies happen on Disney Plus. Very interesting. This could go very well for the company, and it'll be fine. I think like an episodic Star Wars will do fine. But the other thing is too, and this is I keep talking about like the cursed half-life of fandom these days. This is the cursed half-life of making a Disney Star Wars movie. You will never again capture the energy of The Force Awakens. You just cannot do that again. No matter how good or interesting your movie is, people came back to that for Han Solo. That was one of the key components of that. And as much as I love Oscar Isaac, and I love John Boyega, and I love Daisy Ridley, and I like all of the characters that they were talking about and playing with in these things, they are not Harrison Ford. They are not Carrie Fisher. They are not Mark Hamill. And sure, Hamill can return as a Force ghost. Does that have the same impact? Does that mean anything? I don't know if it does. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. It's exciting to me, though, because I'm like, yes, let's get another trilogy. As much as I don't think it's going to happen. I'm saying all of this. I don't think it's going to happen. Do you know how many Star Wars movies they've announced since Disney took over? We were supposed to get a Taika Waititi one. We're supposed to get a Patty Jenkins one. Benioff and Weiss were going to do a trilogy. Rian Johnson was going to do a trilogy. I don't think we're going to get them. But if one person can accomplish it, it's Yes Man and fast-talking producer Simon Kinberg. He, at the very least, can get that made. And that might all this needs to be to happen, is just getting the plot kind of out there and just putting it out there and getting the first movie made, and then you'll come up with the rest of it later. Because clearly, the trilogy of 7, 8, 9 was not as planned out as people thought. So, this could be what they need. Someone just to plot it a little bit. And Abrams was all about the mystery boxes and all that shit. Kinberg's like, no, we'll just do the thing people want, even if it's boring looking and doesn't work. And that's enough sometimes. That could be enough to satisfy people. But are we at this point where people want to see the old stuff? And does the old stuff work with like this new cast of characters that have now suddenly become old because of the cursed half-life of franchises? Or do we have to go farther into the future and put a bunch of old makeup on Daisy Ridley and make that the case? Where do we place them? I don't want you to set just like 5 years after the events of Rise of Skywalker. It has to be further than that. She has to be established. There has to be something else going on. Give us a new golden era. Give us a new golden era, you know? It's important. It works. Don't set it in a desert again. Set it in a boardroom. Let's do the Phantom Menace again. That would be a good idea. Please. But we'll see. Maybe the things I want from Star Wars aren't the things other people want, because I want stuff like The Last Jedi, which is about stop trying to relive the past. We have to move forward, both as like a franchise and as a people. We have to try something new and bold ideas and colors and taking characters into concepts that are fun and interesting. Anything with The Rise of Skywalker, which I feel like they're going to really try to do, and that's why it's been so hard to make a freaking movie. But because Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are the good boys, they'll get one out by May 20-something, 2026. And then they have 2 other movies officially slated, another one for 2026 and then one for 2027. We'll see what happens. Also, Kinberg is producing The Running Man of Glenn Powell. We'll see how that goes. These could be like 2030 as well. Like, if you want, if you're going to do it, 2030 works, because at least then it's 15 years removed from the events of The Force Awakens. I could handle that, but we'll see. So, where do you think Star Wars is going to go? I don't think it's going to go anywhere interesting. But thank you all for watching this episode. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And of course, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. And ack. Yeah, we're doing a Mars attack one. I don't know.